Vodacom Bulls side that will take on the Dragons in round 12 of the Vodacom United Rugby Championship is as follows. Gerus will run out at 1, with Jan-Hendrik Wessels at 2, Wilco Low at 3, Ruan Vermaak at 4, Ruan Nokia at 5, Marco van Staden at 6, Pilo Gumede at 7, Marcel Coetzee at 8. Zach Berger will be at 9, Chris Smith at 10, Ketley Arends at 11, Harold Foster at 12, Canan Moodie at 13, Sebastian de Klerk at 15, and Willie Leroux at fullback. Simpuya Matanzima at 16, Johan Grobler at 17, Morney Smith at 18, Reinhard Ludwig at 19, Nizam Kar at 20, Emrose Papi at 21, Johan Hussein 22, Devin Williams at 23. Nathan, was that clear enough?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, you can kick us off. Thank you.
All right, Jake. Just a game. Just so your thoughts on this coming weekend's game. Your expectations for your team, especially with the guys coming back from a lineman camp. I mean, what are you expecting?
Yeah. So Nathan, look, my expectations are no different. It's difficult to win away from home. You know, the Dragons have had a long time to prepare for this game. They haven't been interrupted by, you know, by any changes. The reality is they probably knew a long time ago that they wouldn't have or would have, I'm not sure what the team's going to look like, would or wouldn't have access to Six Nations players. So they would have been continued to train over the Six Nations period. And I'm sure they'll be prepared. They'll be a well-prepared team. So, you know, in terms of our players, the lineman camp, as I've said to you, is fantastic that our guys are getting exposed to that information they're getting. But, you know, the important thing for me is they need to do what they do well, and what they've done well has been good enough to be seen by the national setup. So, you know, I just want the same as before, just them to focus on the Bulls, focus on their jobs, individually and collectively this week, so that we play properly against the Dragons team, which I'm sure will make it difficult for us.
Thank you, Nathan. Kobus?
Thanks, Lunga. Hello, Jake. I hope you're well.
Good.
Jake, obviously it's again a bit injury enforced, but you have Marco and Marcel again in the loose trio. Were you firstly happy with that combination against the Stormers? And it's nice to have two fetchers in your loose trio.
Yeah, so Kobus, I mean, and also when we bring Grobis on, I mean, Grobis is really good at the breakdown as well. Harold in the midfield is very good at the breakdown as well in terms of turning ball over in the midfield. So I think, you know, we probably got a nice balance there, because, you know, when you've got a guy in the midfield like Harold that can turn the ball over, and you've got two guys like Marcel and Marco that can make it difficult at breakdown time. And I am happy with that combination. I mean, to be fair, I mean, Marcel is a really good carrier, especially close to the line. It's wet here, it's cold here. It's been rainy today, rainy tomorrow in the morning. So probably will be a little bit slower around, which means there'll probably be a little bit more breakdown efficiency needed. And so to have those two guys is important. But it's not just enforced. I mean, we're very fortunate, you know. Pilo Gumede is involved in the national setup in the lineman camps. So we don't have Cameron, and we don't have Elrich, who also involved in that alignment camp. You know, it's a nice place to be. It's a nice position to be in when we can, you know, have those two guys on the injury list and coming back in the next couple of weeks without losing too much, because obviously the experience of Marco, who's a World Cup winner, Marcel, who's a Test rugby player, and then obviously Mpilo and Nazam, who's also a Springbok. You know, it's a nice place to be as a club, to actually have that caliber of loose forwards at our disposal this week without those other two guys.
Jake, and just lastly from me, a lot's been said and written about the depth in the squad this year. You bring in Willie Leroux, Chris Smith, and Harold Foster. It's very nice to rotate, but to have those experience to come into the 15.
Well, Kobus, I just thought about, because I knew you guys were going to ask me, David Creel's played 80, 80, 80 in literally every single game this year. So, I mean, we can't just, we can't use him all the time. And I'm talking about because you need to keep other guys game ready. So a guy like Harold, and the interesting thing I saw when we played the Leinster team in the semi-final, we had Zach at 9, Chris at 10, and we had Harold at 12. And that combination obviously has played in the biggest game we've played, well, one of the biggest games we've played as a group, which was a semi-final away against Leinster, and did really well. And having a guy like Canan playing at 13, to have a guy like Harold, who's probably the most, experienced inside centre we have, 3 Super Rugby finals, as I said, played in the semi-final and final of the URC with the Bulls. It probably helps a little bit that we can rotate. And then you've got a guy like Willie, as I've said many times, Kobus, very clever, very, very good at helping youngsters around the field, communicates well. So to have him behind a guy like Canan defending at 13, have him there with Sebastian on the wing, and obviously Kirtley, who plays with him at the national level. I just think that we're very fortunate that we've got those combinations in place. It takes nothing away from David Creel, takes nothing away from, Devin Williams, who played really well against the Stormers. So yeah, I mean, it is a great position to be in. I mean, the challenge we have is just got to keep working and getting better every week.
Thanks, Jake.
Thank you, Kobus.
Thank you so much. I think you can hear me. Coach Jake, how are you? You turned Loftus into a fortress. How important is it to also get a bulk of positive results when playing away? I mean, which later turns around and ends your home bout in the semis?
Well, I think you've summed it up. That's as important as it is. We know that if you want to stay in the top and you want to get home playoffs, and home playoffs are vital. You've seen with the Stormers over the last 2 seasons, getting home semi-finals and finals has been massive for that club, from a performance point of view and also from a financial point of view. Let's be fair. If your stadium's full for semi-finals and finals, you're in a great position. So as it stands now, we've got 6 games left, 4 at home, 2 away. 4 in South Africa, although we play the Sharks away. So 3 away from Loftus, 3 at Loftus. And, we got to try and do as well as we can away from Loftus as well, to give ourselves a fair crack at getting a home semi-final and hopefully a final as well.
Yeah. And just to follow up on just today's selection, Jake, how much of it is sort of, motivated, especially about next weekend's clash against Leicester? How much is that sort of, how much of that is in your mind in today's selection?
Let me say to you, the one thing I've learned in sport is you can't look too far ahead. So, I mean, I would never jump into a situation where I said, well, what we're doing now is planning for Leinster, because we obviously still got to beat the Dragons, and sport teaches you that. But at the same time, I think we haven't played for 3 weeks since the Stormers. So, and a lot of those players, when I say a lot of those players that are playing now, Harold and Chris and Zach, to use it then, also didn't play against the Stormers, didn't get much game time. Guy like Willie came off the bench. I think so I'm answering the question by saying this to you. There's not just isolated about this weekend. There's definitely planning for next weekend, but the collective decision-making of understanding you need to keep players fresh for a game, because the situation as it is now, we haven't played for 3 weeks. And that means a guy like David Creel didn't play now for 3 weeks, but guys like Harold probably haven't played for 5 weeks. So you've got to get the balance right between keeping everybody game ready, because you're not going to be able to keep the same squad every Saturday, and you're not going to, obviously I'd love to, but I'm not going to have everyone healthy and fit come the back end of the competition either. It's just the way the nature of the tournament is. You're going to lose people along the way, and you have to make decisions now that are helping you either protect some players who've played a lot, but also keep guys that are going to be involved in the back end, game ready and sharp enough to be able to play at that level.
Thank you, Vuyo. Ashfaq.
Thanks, Sunga. Hi, Jake. Hope you're well there. Jake, you've spoken long about Canan as a 13. He's even now played some test rugby there. What can we expect from him? We know what he can do at wing.
Well, Ashfaq, I said to you long ago that I think, I've always wanted to put him back into the centres for a lot of reasons. One is I think he wants to play there, and that's always a nice thing for a player. Because I can see that he's got an extra spring in his step now playing at 13. We're also very fortunate. We've got Devon that can play outside back. Sergio Peterson can play outside back. Henry Immelman can play in the outside backs. Obviously Willie and Kirtley and Sebastian de Klerk. So we're probably more loaded in our outside backs than we are at centre. And that, again, takes nothing away from the other players. It's just when you look at collectively how our backline can be nice and balanced and strong, there's also an opportunity to move Canan to 13. So that's the first positive that we have. One is he wants to play there. Two is we have extra depth at outside back. And what does he bring, Ashfaq? I mean, the one thing he does do really well is he defends well. He likes to tackle. I mean, he generally is one of the best tacklers I've coached because he actually enjoys tackling. And that, doesn't say that other players don't, but I can see he genuinely likes to tackle. And then wing-wise, there are going to be games where if we play against a team that kick a lot, that test us under the high ball, then he might have to go and do a job on the wing as well because he's tall, he jumps well in the air. He's very safe defensively on the wing as well. He understands the backfield. He gets on really well with a guy like Kirtley. They play well together. They complement each other. One's a taller winger, one's a small, nimble winger. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see him at 13, and that's again excited to see him with Harold as well because Harold got a lot of experience. Got Willie behind him talking to him. And, he has a spring in his step because he really wants to play 13 as well. So I'm looking forward to this weekend to see how he adapts in a provincial backline. He did really well for the Boks against the All Blacks. We all know that. And I think he'll definitely use all those things he learned that day and the experience he had that day on the weekend.
And also just Jake, to have more involvement in the game, because sometimes our game can go, the wing may not just come in to play, the ball just doesn't go his way. Whereas at centre, he's a bit closer to the action.
Yeah, well, I suppose that is one way of looking at it. But I mean, really, really, and I don't want to say really good wings, but wings that are busy and get off their wing and get involved are as dangerous, if not more dangerous sometimes because they're not on the wing, than it is for a 13 who is always at 13. It's just the way the game's played now. Some of the most dangerous players are the outside backs who aren't always on the same side of the field you expect them to be on. But, the fact that he wants to play centre, and I say it over and over because there is something he wants to be, he wants to be a centre. And attacking-wise, you're right. If he does get the ball more and we've got outside backs like we have, then we're going to be in a very good position because we're literally going to have a guy who's comfortable to be a winger and a fullback playing at 13, which means he'll have a great appreciation for what it's like to help the outside backs on things that he would like when he's playing in those positions.
Lunga, are you there?
Lunga.
Is Lunga there?
Maybe,
Okay,
Jake, I'll just
alright.
ask quickly,
I think
just in terms of the weather
I'll just go.
conditions, does that
Yes.
change your approach at all?
Look, I don't think it would have changed. I mean, I always knew when we come to Wales this time of the year, field's probably going to be a little bit slower. Rodney Parade, Ashfaq, I don't know if you've been there. It's also a very different ground. It's very open. The wind is a massive factor. And so I don't think it influenced any decision on what we need to do, but it will be something we will speak about and we have spoken about in the build-up, is just to be a little bit more aware of different situations and conditions that we may occur, different to big stadiums where there's less wind inside, etc. So it has an influence selection. I mean, I think the most important attribute for this week's selection was keeping guys game ready, making sure that we keep rotating, keeping sure that we look at combinations that we'd like to see, keeping experience and youth as a as both as important. So having, you know, some experienced players around, some inexperienced players on the field, finishing off with a strong bench. Nazamka, Springbok, you know, Robbie's, you know, one of the most capped guys that we've got in our group. But then a guy like Ludwig, who's still a youngster coming through. And then Emmy and Huison that have played lots together with Devon at fullback, who can slot in at wing and fullback. So yeah, I think that was the most important consideration in our selection, not just the conditions and not just, you know, the ground we're playing on.
Okay, the final two questions will come from Dylan Jack and Yolilwe Kosha in that order. Thank you.
Thanks, Lunga. Hi, Jake. Just during the break, this recent break, you're able to get Impilo Gomede and Steenekamp to sign long-term deals. I mean, they are quite significant long-term deals until 2028. Just your thoughts on not only sort of building the side, not only for now, but also sort of keeping guys in the quite long-term deals and keeping the Bulls healthy for the future.
Yeah. So Dylan, yeah, I mean, that is part of my brief as well. I think one thing the Bulls have learned, they went from triple Super Rugby champions to, you know, many Currie Cup championships under the belt, to a really dry time of about 10 years without winning anything, not even a Vodacom Cup. And I think President Willem Strauss, CEO Edgar Rathbone, board members, and obviously equity partners and shareholders are very aware of the fact that we're building, but we also can't have everyone leaving at the same time. We can't have a situation where we, you know, in the next few years become a really dominant rugby team, and then all of a sudden the next year you start from zero again. So you will find over the next couple of weeks, that we'll get signings. Some guys will extend, some guys will be, will go till 28, and some guys will go to 2029. Some guys already signed, some of our players who signed long-term deals 3 years ago are sort of going to 2027. And I think that's the secret of success, is making sure that you don't get a mass exodus of everybody leaving at the same time. And there needs to be thought and planning into which kind of players you want to keep in your system for a longer period of time. You can't just have everybody graduating out of your under 21 staying for the next 5 years, because then the cycle of building and the cycle of putting a team together starts again. So yeah, I mean, Dylan, it's not just and over the next few years, I'm obviously signed till 2027. Over the next few years, part of my brief would be to make sure the coaching staff also have a succession plan, also make sure that there's a buy-in from the coaches who will be there, obviously longer, that they too have a say in on what that squad will look like and the players they would like to keep. So there's a lot of talk and work behind the scenes from, as I said, everyone involved: CEO, president, shareholders, director of rugby, coaches, on where we would like the club to be in the next sort of 5, 6, 10 years, because it's not just important that we become dominant and successful now. It's important that we can sustain that.
Yolulwe.
Hi, Jake. Thank you, Lunga. Jake, I just wanted to ask, you mentioned that long break after that big win against the Stormers, which will obviously put any team on a high. Do you think that long break in between that fixture and the one that you're facing on the weekend was positive or negative for the team? Maybe you would have wanted momentum, or you would have wanted the guys to rest and come down from that. And I think secondly, how or what were you trying to get across the most during that particular break to your players? Let's go.
Okay, so the two questions on that is I can't answer until I know what happens on Saturday. I mean, has the break been good or bad? Sometimes you have a break, you can refresh, you can try. I mean, it gives us 3 weeks to put a combination of Harold and, for argument's sake, Canan together at training for 3 weeks to play. It's the first time they would have played together as a center combination. So it gives you 3 weeks to get that combination a little bit more settled. without having game time in between. So there's a positive to that. But as I said, I won't know the answer. The one thing that I do know, though, is that the Dragons also haven't played for 3 weeks because the Six Nations has been on. So we're not in a very different world. I mean, the other teams that are also playing this weekend that have had extended time off and would have had, none of the international players, which in itself it can be disruptive as well. We know what that is when we lose our Springboks to rugby championships or end of year tours. So yeah, I'll only be able to answer to myself whether a break has been a good thing or a bad thing. But what it does do as well is that it allows players who are carrying niggling injuries also to get a little bit of time to get their niggling injuries into place. And, maybe we haven't played for 3 weeks. We lost Cameron Hannekom and Ulrich Lowe. Having not played for another 3 weeks, who knows? Maybe we would have lost another 2 loose forwards in those 3 weeks, like Mpilo and Marku. And then we'd be in a very different position now because we would have, we'd have to think a little bit differently about selection. So yeah, I don't think there's a right or wrong. I don't think that's one or the other. I think from us, just personally as a team, we've enjoyed the break. It was also nice to go on a break, having played so well against the Stormers. It was a nice time to, I suppose, like anything, we hadn't played well, taking a break sometimes isn't a nice thing, but we played well, got 5 points, got a real good buzz at the club. Obviously got a nice couple of weeks off to regroup, talk about things, appreciate the fact that we're second on the log. And I suppose that's the challenge now, is to make sure that after that rest, we hit the ground running and we look like a team that's grown from the success we had in the beginning part of the competition.